Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you for taking a bit of time to learn about the Advanced Reporting System. So for those of you who do not know, the Advanced Reporting System is a companion tool to your ECATS platform that you will be using starting this next school year. So the way that Advanced Reporting works is it leverages the individual data elements that your teachers enter whenever they're working on a piece of documentation. And it takes that information and captures and uses it in a reportable way. So for instance, say you are working on an IEP. The teacher is working on that IEP, entering in present levels of performance. They're entering in goal information, service information, and accommodations, and so on. Well, each one of those entries serves as a data element. That data element can then be made reportable when you finalize that IEP. So as part of that final IEP, we capture that historically so that we can go back in time and look and see what things were put on a particular IEP at a particular point in time. Advanced reporting is one of the tools that we have available to look at that history. You, of course, can put eyes on it going to the student's history as part of that student record and just look at things on a one-off basis, but this is how you can access that information in a very aggregated format. It's also how we access information through standard reports. However, you might have questions that you need to have answered, and the standard report does not quite represent the data in the way that you need it. Advanced reporting gives you that flexibility so that you can, on a field-by-field basis, pick and choose what you want to report on, how you want it to be reviewed, and how you want it to filter. So we're going to show you a little bit about how that comes together today. Now, I do want to highlight this is not a training. As this system comes into its own, as you get more comfortable with ECATS, there will be more in-depth reviews of the advanced reporting system and how to use it. But what I want to do today is give you an overview of what's available in the system and get you thinking about what types of reports can be built, what kinds of questions you can answer using advanced reporting. Sometimes it's that imagination, that seeing the end game that can be the most difficult in report building. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with just an overview of the advanced reporting system, and then I'm going to show you a couple of example reports and how they come together to give you some ideas of what you can do in the system yourself. So what you're looking at right now is the summary page that everybody will have access to if they are in your LEA. I will highlight that this is distinct from LEA to LEA. So if you build a report and you save it here for your LEA, you don't have to worry about that information going anywhere else. It is unique to you. But what you're seeing is a series of examples of various folders and pre-built reports that already exist here. This shared folders area is your collective workspace between you and your colleagues. So over time, if somebody's working on a report and you find it useful, they can save it here in the shared folder location so that you can access it. You can take that report, you can make a copy of it if you'd like, and you can start iterating on it. So that if there are specific columns that you want to add with additional pieces of data, you can go ahead and include that in your specific version of the report. You do also have a My Documents section up here. These are things that you can save and keep them strictly to you so that nobody else can access that particular report. You do have the ability to add folders using this new drop down here. And you can add folders within folders too and go somewhat Inception in your file foldering. Over here on the home page, what you will see is a pane of just like quick checkpoints. So things that would be included are recent reports that you've viewed or run, as well as your inbox. So what the inbox is a location for report outputs to be saved. To make that a little bit more meaningful for those of you who may be rolling your eyes at me at the moment. We can do with a report is if there's one that you like and you want it, say, delivered to you on a weekly basis, we can tell the system to do that for you. So, and honestly, we don't even have to do it. You have all the tools available already. And so what you can do is you can set up that report to run on a predetermined schedule. You could be every Friday, every Monday, and you can pick the time. And it will deliver to your inbox with the most recent results that it can pull. And then all you have to do is come to this page, this home page, and look at the most recent items in your inbox and download whatever is most appropriate. Now, I mentioned most recent that it can pull. One key piece to keep in mind with advanced reporting is it does typically run on about a day lag. Every evening, the database within ECATS will be copied and be made available to you here in this advanced reporting tool. So it is not real time in that regard. Real-time information can be pulled through your standard reports, your student search, or directly looking up those students. However, it is very close. Now let's look at how you start a new report. We won't build one end-to-end just yet, but let's go ahead and look at that start. So what you would do to start a new report is to come up here to Applications. You'd hit the drop-down and you'd choose Web Intelligence. After selecting Web Intelligence, you would find this white blank sheet of paper. It stands for New, and you click on it. Select your universe. Make sure the right universe is set for you, and click OK. And what that will do is that will open up the query pane. So the way advanced reporting reports come together is effectively a two-step process, where you first identify which of those discrete fields we were talking about earlier, which of those fields you would like to use. And then you define, and within this first step, you then define how they relate to one another. So for instance, do you only want students at a particular school? Do you only want students in a particular grade or with a particular disability? Do you only want special ed students? These are the kinds of questions you would start to ask yourself. And you'd filter your results based upon those conditions. After you make those determinations here in the query pane, you would return a series of results, and it would be a report output. But from there, you have a host of other opportunities to continue manipulating the data, filtering it down even more, or adding more specificity. So this is the start, and this is how you would start a report. What I'm actually going to do is back out and start with the end in mind, because sometimes imagining the final report that you want is the hardest part of all. So let's look at a finalized report and then back into it and see how that report came to be. So here we go. This report that we're looking at is built for the purpose of monitoring key events tied to a student's record. It's built to monitor when those events are coming due. So you can think about it in terms of an eligibility, where you may have an eligibility coming due in the next 30 or 45 days, and you want to keep track of that particular type of event. It may be the same as an IEP, where an IEP may be coming due and you want to monitor those annuals. So the way that this report is built to run is it's pulling all of your special ed kiddos, and again, this is all test data, but then it's adding in a couple of additional filters. So in this case, I have two tabs within this report output. So I have a list of students where the event that I have selected is ending within 90 days. And then I have an aggregated or a longer, more longitudinal type of look at when my peak due dates are for a particular type of event. So the way that this works, I'm going to come down here and hit refresh on this report. What happens is I am prompted to input a particular event that I want to review. So right now I'm looking for my currently valid eligibility determination. So what that means is that I will be viewing results for students based upon those eligibility determinations. If I wanted to look for something else, say an IEP, I could just select an IEP here and add that to my selected options, remove the eligibility, and then the report would return results based upon those IEPs coming due. So let's go ahead and run that. So my report has now run, and I'm returning results based upon that IEP. So what you are now seeing are a list of students who have an end date within 90 days for a currently valid IEP. So that is my list to watch. Luckily, none of these are immediately due, so there's still some time for me to act, but you can set this report to run on a scheduled basis and just continue to receive that list, be it every week for something like this, maybe every month is appropriate. Let's now flip over to peak due dates. In peak due dates, we have a series of graphs available. So you'll see that the graphical data is split out into 2 years right now, so 2018 and 2019. And it is showing me for my special ed students, those students who have that IEP, it is showing me when that IEP is coming due, what month. So I have a number of students with an IEP coming due in July, August, September, October, and then in this particular case, I don't have anything else until March of next year. This would be a rather small school in this case, right? Down below, the second graph I have shows when that IEP started. And really, because it's event date, in this case, it's when that IEP meeting was held. And so you'll see it correlates pretty closely with the other data that I'm seeing up above. If I want to see this for eligibility, all I have to do is rerun that report, choose eligibility determination, remove my IEP, and it will give me my readout for eligibility. And you'll see I have a lot more like different types of colors for this particular graph as well, because eligibility runs over the course of 3 years, and this is showing that due date based upon year. So in this case, I would primarily be looking for those blues because that's my 2018. You see I have a peak coming up here in June that I might need to watch for. All right, so that is how you can read this report. Let's go ahead and dive into how this report came together in the first place. So to do that, I'm going to come up here to design. So this is our report output, remember. This is how we can have data display. That's that end goal. You do have the ability to export this as well and display it in Excel. For any kind of table, it just populates in those Excel blocks. For any kind of graph like this, it exports as an image. So you would have both of those. But say I want to see what makes up this query. What is it that actually returns these results? Well, I can come up here to edit query. And I'll see what actually made up this report. So to start with, what we did was we chose some key data elements here: student code, last name, first name, case manager, school, grade abbreviation, and then some information about the particular events that we were working with. I then have my query filter down below. So for instance, because of the nature of this report, I'm only interested in seeing active students. For the selector type, this is how we choose what event we want to look at. Remember when we were toggling between an eligibility and an IEP? Those are events in the system, and the selector is how we can choose what event we want to work with. I have this set up to be a prompt, so when the report runs, it asks me what event I want to choose rather than predefining it here. That way, if I want to change my option, I don't have to come back to this query panel. I then have schools. I have it filtered down to just my test schools, so we're only working with test data. And then I have my date parameters to make sure that the dates that I'm looking at are just those that I'm interested in. So my end date must be greater than or equal to the current date. So these are my coming dues, not my overdues. All right, and you can see too, this query can be stacked, and so I have my AND query here, where students must meet multiple elements. So they must be an active student, and they must have an event of the selected type. But then I have OR, which is an either or. The last thing to highlight while we're working in the query panel is this object table over here. So again, when we were talking earlier about those individual data points that teachers would put into the system as part of completing a document, they're inputting some of this information. Now, in the query that we have built here, there's not quite as much stored, but we do have the ability to pull in some of that other information. So let's start with what we have. For instance, student code. In ECATS, student code will be coming over from PowerSchool. Teachers will not have to enter it. However, it is a discrete data element that we can pull into reports should we choose to. Similarly with last name and first name, case manager and school and so on. These are all data elements, and all these common fields that you see tied to the student are often data elements that we consume from other sources. However, as you start scrolling, you will see information that originates out of ECATS. So information related to students' IEP, information related to goals, to services, participations, and so on. Those will all be discrete data elements that you can pull into reports and then use in an aggregated way. There are a couple of ways that you can do this. Of course, there's the report that we've built, and I'll show you another similar type of example of this type of report. And really what I'm thinking about is this aggregated like analytical style report building, where you want to take types of data, turn them into numbers, and then see what they mean. So in this case, we're looking at eligibilities that are coming due by month, or IEPs that are coming due by month. But there's another type of reporting that you can do as well. Say you want to monitor goal writing for a particular school or across your entire LEA. You can write a report that returns results of goals written across your entire LEA, and then all you have to do is type in a student code to see the goals for that specific student. So there are things like that we can do as well. So that's how our report comes together. We kind of went in reverse, but I think it's helpful to see that end result. So again, we're on the query panel, and when you're building a new report, this is where you start, right? Once you finish this query, once you've built out everything, you click Run Query, and it will return your report results like what we saw earlier when we hit Run Report. From there, you have the ability to modify this report page. If I didn't want some of this data to be included, so if I did not care to see the number of days since that particular event date, I can remove it. And it's gone. And then we can take that data and build graphs like we saw over here on peak due dates. So that gives you an idea. Let's go ahead and move on to this next report. So what this report is a bit more of like a survey style report. And when I'm building a survey type of report, there's usually one thing that I always try to do, and that is make sure that the raw data set that I'm using to build that report is part of my output. So that's what you see here first. It's just a readout of all of those different data elements that go into the graphs and things like that we are about to look at. And that's really useful, right? Because when you go to present data, if you're trying to make a case for this or that, having that raw material, that raw results that informed your decision-making process, just gives it that much more credibility. And since this information is always changing, services can change on a day or a weekly basis, having that snapshot of that data as it existed in the point in time in which you captured it is really key. So that's what you're looking at here in this report. The other two tabs, and again, we'll start at high level and then kind of back into how the report itself was built. The other two tabs, the first one starts with the student survey data. So really what we're doing is we're looking at EC students, and then we're breaking them up, basically counting them and breaking up those counts based upon various other data elements, be it demographic data, disability, or what have you. So on this first page, you will see a count by student by disability, or really by gender by disability. And so we have like autism, developmentally delayed, ID moderate, ID severe, and then within each category, if there's both a male and a female student, then they each display. So we see unique counts of each. So that's graph number 1. If I scroll down just a little bit, you'll see I do have a raw student count as well. That tells me the total number of students that I'm returning for this particular report. And then I see the aggregated breakdown by gender, and then ultimately the aggregated breakdown by race. These are raw numbers. That's important to keep in mind. Oftentimes for reports like this, the raw numbers are interesting, but you might want to go into percentages as well and figure out what those numbers are as a percentage of the total student population or the total population of students identified as having a disability. But one thing in this report that I do want to highlight are these input controls. So remember earlier when I talked about how we can return results based upon, return a list of all the goals written in your LEA and then filter them down for an individual student? Well, these input controls are how we do that. So we can add an input control that allows you to search for an individual student. We can also add an input controls that just prompt you to filter by a certain piece of data. And so if I am particularly interested in seeing my breakdown for gender based upon a specific race, then I can select that race here in my input controls, and my report will filter down based upon those results. And so what I'm seeing is that overall I have twice as many female students identified with a disability as male students for the race of Black or African American. Similarly, I can select white and see those results adjust accordingly. Asian, unknown, and so on. I can also filter this down by gender. So you can look at the same kind of information, but just in the reverse, and look at your racial breakdown based upon gender. You can filter by individual grade. You can filter by school. And so you can see how this information changes from school to school. I only have one school available because, again, this is test data. But then you can also look at this based upon disability as well. And so if you only want to see this information for students identified as autistic, you can select that. All right, let's look at another graph. So let's look at students by service and school. So if I had multiple schools here, I'd see individual counts on a school by school basis. Again, this is something that we can control for and adjust based upon raw counts or percentage. But we can also scroll down and look at the most common service types that are being assigned based upon IEPs. And so if a lot of students are qualifying for a math service or reading service or speech service, that information would show up here. And again, we can break that down by some of the other demographic information that we're looking at. So by male or female, by race, by school even, or by disability. So sometimes you can just by having a survey type of report like this, you can discover things about your district or your LEA that you might not have known otherwise. So the goal in building a report like this is to try and make information discoverable. And once you do make that discovery, once you do identify something that you think is worth sharing, it's important to be able to export that information, right? Be able to share it out. Of course, if the person that you're talking to does have access to advanced reporting, they can come in here and view this information themselves. You can save the filters as you have them so that they are available, or you can come up here to this export function. And if I hit export, I have a few different export types. I can export document or export current report. In this case, we want everything, each tab that we were working at, the raw data set, the survey, EC student data, and then students by service in school. So I'm going to choose export document as, and then you can choose, say, Excel. So go ahead and download that document. And there are your report results. All right. So we've talked a bit about how to navigate in advanced reporting, some of the things that are available. and how you can go about building different types of reports. The last thing that I do want to highlight is the importance of choosing key folks for this advanced reporting role. As an administrator, it may not be the case that you have the time or really even the focus for building these reports yourself. You may you're certainly able to, but it might not be what your focus is. And so it is important to start thinking about who in your LEA has the skill set to learn a tool like this. And it's more than just like the technical familiarity to be able to learn a reporting structure like a system like this. It's somebody who has that background, who knows what kinds of questions to ask, and how and when to push for that clarification when it's needed, because it's not always the case that the initial question that you ask is the right one to be asking for the particular report that you actually need. Sometimes the questions need to be broken up into subparts and what have you, and it's important to have somebody in your LEA who has a familiarity with EC process and policy, but also some technical background to be able to help you with that, and to build these reports in an efficient means. Real quick, once a report is built, it is certainly possible to go ahead and schedule that report. So I'm going to come over to my Documents tab here, and let's just go ahead and say we have a wonderful little report right here, EGIEPAR 1274. So I can right-click on this, and I can come down and click Schedule. So this is that scheduling functionality here that we were talking about. I can name it something else as part of the schedule, and then I can define the reoccurrence. So if I want it to run now and only now, I can do that. But if I want to set it up to run once hourly, daily, weekly, I can do this. So if I choose weekly, I can define how often I want it to run. So maybe Mondays, let's do Mondays and Fridays. And then I can set my begin date and end date parameters. So let's have it run until 2024. The next thing that you would do is choose your format. So it might be the case that you want it to export as a web intelligence document, but oftentimes, if you're having somebody help you with this, you're going to want them to schedule it as Microsoft Excel. Because what that means is when you go to open this particular report, it will open up immediately in an Excel spreadsheet. You won't have to go into the business object and then download those results. So this would be the most convenient. Other than that, all you need to do is hit schedule, and it will schedule that report to run. So I hope you found this helpful. I hope this has gotten you thinking a little bit about how you can use this tool in your LEA. It is a very powerful tool. It often does take a little bit of time to get used to it and start thinking about how to report, and specifically how to report within your ECATS environment. There will be a little bit of an orientation time. That's to be expected, but I'm really excited to hear about all the reports that you start building in your LEAs, and what things you come up with, because this is something that we do continue to hone and work on over time. We do continue to massage the tool. We add to it as new things are introduced to the system, and we do grow the tool with you. So as you have specific needs come up, we will help you custom tailor the advanced reporting universe to meet the needs of your LEA and the needs of the state. So again, thank you all so much for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your meeting.